Hey, everybody, Lieutenant Joe here for the Blue Heart podcast. So, I try to bring people on that are interesting in the law enforcement world, people who have something to offer, right? We all know there's a lot of people out there that just like to run their mouths and talk, but I come across some amazing people, and one of them is the young lady you see right here. This is former captain of the Caldwell PD. This is Donna Roman-Hernandez. Now, let me tell you, I'll tell you a little bit, but then Donna will tell you the real story. First of all, an amazing police career she had. And after that career, she continued to be creative and to do things that most people in retirement don't do. So Donna is a filmmaker. Blue Force Films is her company. She is award-winning director and writer. Her programs are amazing. She's also a master trainer. She is now branching into the podcast world. She's an author of a book and probably more. And she'll probably do some training down the road. She's worked with me several times on programs. Her programs are always very well received. She's an excellent presenter, and I thought it would be nice for you to hear from this amazing woman in law enforcement. Donna, how are you?
I'm great, Joe. Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to share.
That's great. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about you than what I said?
Well, you said a lot, and I appreciate it. Yes, I did serve in law enforcement for 30 years. The balance of my career was with the Caldwell Police Department, but I cut my teeth, so to speak, with the Essex County Police Department. And I rose to the rank of captain and then retired to pursue doing other things, some of them that you've discussed, uh, training law enforcement officers and also community and my expertise of sexual assault, domestic violence, and trauma-informed response. So that's one tier of what I continue to do. The other part is making documentaries and creating content about mostly about stories. Some of them are true, some of them are not true, and created two contents for TV series pitches, which we're hoping will get picked up in the near future. And the immediate future is my new podcast, Joe, which I'm very excited about.
Yes, I want to talk about that because the
Women,
whole idea of women in law enforcement is amazing.
yes, it is. And I have a lot of experience and big networks of women in law enforcement. So it's a perfect fit for my new podcast, which I'm hoping will be collaboratively speaking, hosted by you and your new endeavors. Women Cops, the Force, and the new website is going to launch a couple of weeks. Womencops.com
Women
and
cop.
my right, womencops.com and my book Battered Blue, which is a memoir of sorts, will be published at the same time, springtime actually. In the springtime that'll come out. So everything is coming to fruition. My brand is all about what I'm doing, and yeah, it's interesting.
It's interesting and it's a whirlwind. I thought I was a whirlwind. You're quite the whirlwind. You've always has been since the minute I met you years and years ago. So let's see. First of all, for the ladies out there, for women of law enforcement, when I teach and train and I go to different places and I talk about, especially in my leadership class, is there value in having women in law enforcement? It seems like, boy, that's a really old question. Don't we get past that? But there's still a lot of people that don't understand the amazing value of having women. I'm not a diversity guy for diversity's sake, just, oh, it's diversity. But the reality is we have to have people in law enforcement that represent the communities that we serve. Because you know what? I come from an Italian background. So if you had somebody who knows nothing about an Italian family and you have a community of Italian people and you have crime or something going on in there and you don't know anything about the customs, the traditions, you can have a hard time investigating it properly. Having women in law enforcement, especially women like you that are dynamic, that are smart, that are great leaders. I mean, rising to the rank of captain is amazing. I never got there. So I think it is hugely important that we have women in, and the voice of our women officers has got to be better represented. And I'm thrilled that you're going to be doing this podcast, and we are going to try and throw it here on our network, on the Blue Heart Podcast Network, so that people can come here. The other place that we're going to put it is we have I am now doing a lot of things with Blue 360 Media. That's one of our sponsors, right? That's one of the sponsors of our show over here. and I'm going to be helping them develop a training platform, video online. And what we're going to have there is hopefully a network of podcasts from me, Donna, Anthony Ganji, all kinds of people who have content for the law enforcement world. So that's always a place to go to. And you should check out the training and the books and all the other stuff that's there. So, Donna, I'm glad that you're a part of this. So let's see, what is the podcast going to be called?
Women Cops, the Force.
Women Cops the Force. I like that. And when do you think you're going to have a launch?
Within a week or so.
Oh, that's pretty soon. And what kind of topics? What's the content going to be? Is it male officers going to listen as well, or you aiming just for female law enforcement officers? Who's going to come to the podcast?
We invite any and all people to that are pro women in law enforcement, of course, that have worked alongside women in law enforcement, that have women in law enforcement in their families. It's going to be a selection of a lot of different viewpoints. But as I said, we're pro women in law enforcement. And I feel that not that I'm going to be the only one out there with this type of website or podcast, but I know that my voice is important because I've had to fight a lot through my career to obtain things that I shouldn't have had to obtain. I mean, I had the quality of work. I was a very good officer, but I hit some stumbling blocks back in the early '90s, and I realized that I was alone in my fight because there were not the support groups, there were not podcasts. Women in law enforcement were not as readily hired. So we're going to talk about hiring and retention, and then some of the things that are just systemic and endemic with being women on the job.
Yep.
And we define who we are, and we don't want to be defined. We define who we are, and women are in a lot more different diverse positions within the field of law enforcement than when I came on the job. So it's a look backwards, a look at what happened in the middle, and then a look forward
That's
to where our potential will bring us.
and what I'm thinking of is, as a lieutenant, and in my agency, we had our first female officer come on the department, and I was a patrolman. I was in the FTO program, and they said, "Listen, we don't know how to do this with a female officer, so you do it." And she was absolutely amazing as a young lady. But over the course of years, we put on quite a few young women who were really good cops. So I think for any supervisor out there that has female officers, I would tune into this show all the time to get the female perspective so you understand. And that's when I talked about, having women in law enforcement, why it's so important is because it's a completely different perspective on things. And that is important when you investigate. You want to know everything you possibly can. You want to understand every angle. So understanding all the different people we have that come from different backgrounds, men, women, different races, religions. We want to understand all of that so we can properly investigate and serve our communities. So I think it's going to be an amazing show. I've listened to you talk before. You are a dynamic speaker. You have excellent content. So I'm really excited that this show is going to be out there, and I suggest everybody listen to it. All
Well,
right.
thank you. You've always been a big supporter of my dreams and passion, and we've had a lot of conversations about the need for women, how women and men experience the job differently, what our roles are in family situations. And so, yes, I agree with you. This is reality. It's reality radio. Shows you do and I do. We talk about the real things in life. We identify the bad if we have to, but we definitely make the good rise up.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's fantastic. Now, I know we've been talking about your book a little bit, you and I, and when I heard your personal story, and I think we'll do a whole show on the book when it comes out, The Battered Blue. I think that's the title.
Battered Blue, right?
Right. When it comes out, we'll have you back on and we'll talk all about it. But what is the basic story? Because I think when people meet you, you are so strong, you are so smart, and then to hear the story that happened to you it's kind of incongruous until you realize that this goes on. Your story, similar stories go on every single day, and we don't always know who's here. It's about being involved in a domestic violence situation, right?
Yes, my father was on the job, and unfortunately, he suffered from post traumatic stress disorder, which was not identified as such back in the day. When he came back from World War II as a disabled officer, he had baggage. He had the trauma of war. He had the trauma of violence in his own nuclear family growing up. And so he was a perpetrator of that violence within the home setting for over 35 years. And it was child abuse when I was younger. As I got older, it was flat out domestic violence as per, the law, especially where I'm from in the state of New Jersey. But he was extremely violent, tried to take my life twice, once through manual strangulation, the other one was with a firearm. He bullied my mother into submission. Unfortunately, she died from illnesses and addictions related to the violence. And then I had to hide this secret, going to work with black and blues underneath my uniform, and then locking up the bad guys and girls who committed acts of domestic violence, prosecuting them, and then going home and allowing my father, the master manipulator, batterer, to do the things that I didn't allow other people to do to others. But he had guns. He said aloud what he was going to do and what he meant. And it was terrible because I didn't have anyone to go to. I didn't want to turn to the job because I thought that they would think I was weak for allowing this to happen. So my book is a look back at what happened and then how I was empowered to move forward. But it's a lot of secrets that I'm telling that I haven't told anyone. So it was hard to write and hard to read. When I was reading the manuscript, I couldn't understand why that person that I was reading about, who was me, allowed so many years to pass by without standing up. But the bottom line is that most women and men who suffer in those types of relationships, even biological ones, know that it's a breath away from being killed. Say it and you can be killed. So, and I knew he would kill my mother before me. So it was that very delicate balance and tightrope that I walked. And even now, with its release, I'm getting nervous. Even though my dad's been deceased for over 20 years, it almost feels as though like I'm betraying this biological connection who was allowed to do at will what he wanted to do to me and all the trauma that he left behind with me. But I'm a woman of faith, and I believe that my book will help so many people in desperate situations in life to heal. So that's why it took a little longer than I wanted to let it go and come out in public, but I'm ready now because our world needs to heal. We just came through a pandemic, and a lot of people allowed things to happen in their households because there was nowhere to go. They were just stuck in those situations like me. But I'm ready. I'm ready to tell it. And I want to thank you, Joe, because over all of the years of our friendships, you've always been kind to my trauma, and you've always been a great friend, a great cop, and someone that I could rely on to understand me. So I publicly just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Donna. And as I listen to what you're saying, I got to say it sound you're putting this book out and it's bringing up these old feelings, and I'm sure there's some trauma for you. Trauma doesn't go away, but you understand trauma because you teach about it. Um, and I'm thinking about your dad, and I didn't know your dad. And when you told me the story, I don't know, I guess I had to be angry with him that he would do such a thing to you, somebody that I care about and love, and your mom, who I never met. But you're right. How many people must go through this every day? And I didn't experience it. I don't know it. I know that but as a cop, I saw it every single day. When I think about your dad, and I would offer this to you as you let this story out, and it feels like a betrayal of this, that, and the other thing. I think the reality is, if I could venture and say, down underneath all of that violence and that trauma, because we know he wasn't just a bad man, he was traumatized, and that caused a lot of the problems, I'm going to guess. By you telling this story and saving other people, because I think it will,
Mhm.
I think that's a way to heal your father, that he probably wouldn't want to be like this, to cause these problems in your family. And I think that good comes out of the bad, and that's just the way I'm seeing it as I think about it here. There's
Well,
good out of that.
you're very intuitive, and I'll share something with you that's in the book that I think that your audience will want to know something that I put in the book. And I feel safe. I'm in a safe space with you to share it. When my father was near death, um, I was told by a family member, you need to go and get closure and all of that, which I didn't want to go, but it was my mother who said, you should go. And I went to the hospital, and he was very ill and unrecognizable. That's how sick he was. I hadn't seen him in a number of years. And I didn't know what I was going to say. And I just said a prayer, for guidance, because I was just so angry that I really thought over my life, and there were some good times. So I said one thing to him as I knew he was passing. I said, I forgive you, but I will never forget what you did to me.
Yes.
May have not have been the most empathetic thing to say, and being a trauma expert, it probably went against the grain of everything. But for me, it was my stand in life, because he tried to take my life twice.
Yeah. It was your power.
Yeah. And I left and never divulged that to anyone.
Well,
Never
I think
divulged.
that's amazing. And
Yeah.
thank you. Thank
You,
you.
you're
It,
welcome.
it's important. And that's why all the classes that you've taught, that you've been with me teaching in different locations, when you talk about trauma informed response and domestic violence, and this book I think is going to make a difference to people, because when you see a law enforcement officer, when you talk about having bruises under your uniform, that's not something we think about in law enforcement. That's not us. We run the world, right? Isn't that, we got badge AmeriCard? We do what we need to do. We save people. We save the world. We're heroes, and nobody would think you would come home to that. And I think it's even more important. You said what you said was, you would go and do this and arrest people and charge people for domestic violence and then go home to it. And why did you let it go on so long? That is part of the cycle of domestic violence. It goes on and on and on. Why do we go and lock up these people? And 3 weeks later, the woman forgives the husband, brings him back in the house. He beats her up again. We lock him up. Why does it go on and on? And one of the things I teach to officers when I do domestic violence talks, because we all in New Jersey, we have to train on domestic violence response twice a year. And it can be boring in the classroom because we do it every single day. We go on these calls, ask any officer, they go to domestic calls constantly. And you say, we're going to sit and talk about the law again. We're going to talk about the. I tried to add just one little piece, and probably from knowing you and hearing your story, is that yes, it's frustrating to go to that house, lock this person up again, go through all the paperwork, do everything you have to do, and then they drop the charges, they get back together, and it's the cycle, and it goes on and on. If you don't do the right thing each and every time you go on one of those calls, that one time that you do the right thing might be the seventh time you lock somebody up. That might be the moment that victim finally says, I've had enough and I want to get help. I want to get out. I want to save myself. And if you just go there as, oh, we're going to that house again. All right, drag him out. She's going to forgive him. I think we miss an opportunity as law enforcement to help people save their own lives. Because it's not just a matter of being, well, it wouldn't happen to me. Nobody would beat me up. Unless you're trapped in that cycle, you don't understand it. And that's why I think your book is important. It's your probably mandatory reading in police academies. Um, and for my Blue 360 connection, we should probably make a course out of this and teach this to officers. But it should be mandatory reading in police academies. Cops should go onto the job understanding this. So that's why I think it's so important. And I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about it.
Thank you. You're spot on, Joe, about everything you've said. I agree totally. If I could just add something to that, is after I retired, worked for the Attorney General's office as the domestic violence liaison for Essex County in New Jersey. Part of that job was working with a nonprofit organization, but collecting data just through informal interviews from women in the shelters, their names not included. Why did they stay? What are their needs? Those types of things, right?
Mhm.
Post victimization. well, let's just say post leaving, right? Someone has left and now they're seeking shelter because victimization is a journey through lifetime. And I would speak to them, and very honestly, they would say, "I left with no shoes on my feet this time because I finally believed in that moment he was going to kill me and my children. Left without shoes on my feet." That's what they would say. A lot of them would leave without shoes because it would be they were in bed, they were awoken by the violence, or that they had to leave that quickly because they knew that that was the day that they were going to be potentially harmed
Yeah.
to a degree of maybe fatality. And so fear is forever, as in me, right? I fear my batterer, even though he's passed, decades gone. But it's a cycle of violence, and it's a master manipulation of the psyche, and it's like being a prisoner of war. You know the war, you leave the war behind, your capture behind, but that doesn't. You have to retrain the brain, and it's very difficult. So safe spaces is what I like to talk about in whenever I'm talking about domestic violence, because a safe space could be anywhere. It's not like a room designated as a safe space. Just outside the door of your home,
Hmm.
where there's some barrier between you and your batter, that could be a safe space.
Right.
So it's a philosophy, and I'm unhappy that I had to go through it, but I'm on the other side now, and I want to continue my advocacy in the best way that I can, and telling my story is what I know how to do best.
Yes, you do. I'm very proud to be your friend. So
Thank you.
give me the name of the website again.
So I'll give you a couple of my websites because they
Yep.
all have certain things on it that all come to one place.
Yep.
So the new website will be womencops.com. My film work is Blue Force Films with an S.com. And then my other website is DonnaRoman-Hernandez.com. And that is for my violence intervention and prevention specialist, the training that I do, and my community engagement
Outstanding.
initiatives. Yeah.
And the book is Battered Blue, and that'll be out in the spring of 2025. And like I said,
Yes.
we'll
Yeah.
have you back on again to talk about that. In the meantime, I think this program right here, just this little bit of conversation, first of all, you can hear the skill set Donna has to talk about this. And when she tells you the whole story, you'll be immersed in it and you can probably help people. So I talked about Blue 360 Media. I got to mention my other sponsors right here because this is going to be an important program. Riot Tint, they make window covering for schools and businesses to prevent the glass from breaking. And then Medical Essential Diagnostics, right? MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com for anybody in law enforcement or any kind of a public worker, state, county, local. You go to them, you get a complete health screening at no cost to you and to adults in your family. They support this show. So Blue 360 Media, uh, the Riot Tint, and also Medical Essential Diagnostics. And all of them will probably want to do something in the future with Donna because this is fantastic. So look for those websites. I'll put it all in the information for the show. You can see the websites. Go visit her stuff. When the book comes out, make sure you buy the book. And for my law enforcement men and women out there, we do the right thing in domestic violence, and Donna's story is going to help you do a good job. It's going to save some people. So Donna, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And we will see you down the road when your show kicks out. We'll get it on the network here.
Thank you, Joe. May I just say something very quickly to my brothers and sisters in law enforcement? Your show is very important. Please support Joe Pangaro. Uh, Whenever I needed someone to listen, Joe was there, non-judgmental and honest. And so, Joe, once again, I thank you for what you do, and all my law enforcement brothers and sisters out there. Whatever Joe Pangaro is involved with, whether it's a podcast, whether it's his books, whether it's writing and teaching, please support his initiatives as I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Everybody, remember, what do they tell you? Like, subscribe, and we'll see you down the road, everybody. Have a great day.